Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all,
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
first of all, let me introduce our members. We are from 8 group, and our members are Novit Kharisma Dwi Ag, me myself, Nur Sa'adah, and Siti Sani Kasuniyah. So today's presentation, we would like to explain about descriptive statistics and assumption tests. So for the first explanation, next one. The definition about descriptive statistics. The term descriptive statistic refers to the analysis, summary, and presentation of findings related to a data set derived from a sample or the entire population. Descriptive statistics consist three main categories, such as measures of frequency, measures of central tendency, and measures of variability. Descriptive statistics are used to summarize data in an organized manner by describing definition about statistics. Statistics, in a simple words, is basically the science of collecting, analyzing, and interpreting. Interpreting about the data. Statistics usually broken down into two categories, which is descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. In our presentation today is about descriptive statistics, which is focused on organizing and summarizing the data. Next. So we move to the types of descriptive statistics. Next. For the first, we can organize our data or summarize our data with the previous slide, San. Nah, okay, we can organize our data with a graph or table. In here, measures of frequency. Absolute frequency is the number of times a particular value in the data. In contrast, relative frequency is the number of times particular value occurs in the data, or absolute frequency relative to the total number of value for the variable. The relative frequency may be expressed in ratio, rates, proportions, and percentage. Measures of frequency are often expressed visually in the form of tables, histograms, bar graphs, line graphs, pie charts, etc., to make the information more easily interpretable. Next. Okay, next. We move to measures of central tendency. Central tendency is the value that describes the entire offset data as a single measurement. The three primary measures of central tendency are mean, median, mode, as we know in statistic measure. For the first is mean. The mean is the value we commonly call the average. To calculate the mean, sum up all observations and then divide this sum by the number of subjects or observation. In statistical language, the mean is denoted uh, by X bar or rata. An observation is denoted by X, and the sample is denoted by N. The mathematical language, X bar sama dengan X1 plus X2 plus X3 till Xn per N. Okay, next. Okay, next. Okay, next is median. The median or midpoint is the middle number of a distribution. It is less sensitive to outliers and therefore a more resistant measures of central tendency than the mean. To calculate the mean by hand, just line all values up in order and find the middle one or average of two middles when n. And number of observations is even. And mode. The mode is the value that occurs most often in the sample. In cases where there are several values that occurs most often, the mode can consist of these several values. Next. Uh, so here is the example that we can use for in measures of frequency and measures of central tendency. So in here there is a case. Imagine that we are interested in measuring the level of anxiety of the college students during the final test in one of our course. We have 11 student participants and rate their level of anxiety on a scale from 1 till 5, with 1 being no and 2 being mild, 3 being moderate, 4 being severe, and 5 being very severe. Ratings and review them. The ratings are 3, 4, 3, 3, 4, 3, 5, 2, 4, 4, 4. And we want to summarize our data. How do we summarize that data? One way we could do by using descriptive statistics. Next. So here is the tables. We can use, summarize our data by using measures of frequency in here using tables. The scales of anxiety, normal is 0, mild is 1, moderate for frequency, and etc. Next. The next is using bar graph. So in here is the example of bar graph that based on our data. Okay, next. Okay, the next is pie chart. In here, pie chart usually following by the percentage number, by the percentage. In here we can see in normal 0%, and mild is 9%, moderate is 36%, and etc. Next. Okay, this is the line graph. We can summarize it with Excel. Okay, next. So in here we can organizing our data with a central tendency. So based on sample of data, the mean is 3.54, and the median we can in data set of 11 students. The median is the number in sixth place, which is 4, and the number 4 appears more than any other numbers. Thus, the mode is 4. Okay, next will be presented. Next slide will be presented by Sani. San, suaranya nggak dengar.
Belum di-unmute itu, San, kamu.
Sorry. And next, 3, measure of dispersion or variation. Rank. The rank is the difference in the maximum and minimum values of a data set. The maximum is the larger value in the data set and the maximum is the smaller value. The range is easy to calculate, but it is very much affected by extreme values and formula range equal maximum min minimum. Next, interquartile range. The interquartile range is the difference between upper and lower quartile and denoted as IQR. IQR equal key 3 min key 1 equal upper quartile min lower quartile equal 75 percentile min 25 percentile. Next, C variance, the average square distance from the mean. Population variance, this is formula, and sample variance, and this is formula, like this. And then D, standard deviation, approximately the average distance, the value of a data set are from the mean or the square root of the variance. Have 2, population standard deviation and sample standard deviation. And E, coefficient of variation, a popular statistic to use in such situation is the coefficient of variation or CV. This is a unit-free statistic and one where the higher the value, the greater the dispersion. The calculation of CV is for population, and for sample, this is formula. And then assumption test with Ms. Novit Kharisma.
Okay, the next is the assumption test. Next. Next, Sani. Halo, apakah suara saya terdengar?
Iya. San, next.
Dengar.
Okay, now.
The assumption test in statistical analysis All parametric tests assume some certain characteristic about the data, also known as assumptions. And the violation of these assumptions change the conclusion of the research and interpretation of the results. Therefore, all research, whether for a journal article, thesis, or dissertations, must follow the assumption for the accurate interpretation depending on the parametric analysis, the assumption vary. And this is the data assumption commonly found in statistical research. Next. Next is the type of the assumptions. First is the normality test. Normality test is used to determine whether or not the normal distribution of data. Maksudnya itu uji normalitas itu digunakan untuk mengetahui apakah data berdistribusi itu normal atau tidak gitu. Good research data is data that has a normal distribution. Most of the parametric tests require that the assumption of normality be met. And data that is not normal can be distinction from the level of skew. Di sini maksudnya tuh dari kemiringan. Nah, if the data tends to be skewed to the left, it's called positive skewness. And if the data tend to be skewed to the right, it's called negative skewness. And the data is said to be normal if the data is symmetrical. This is like the figure of one. You can see that. The normal data A is a negative skewness, and then the B is a zero skewness, and then the C is positive skewness. Next. Next, Sani. Next is the normality test. That is, the normality testing can be done by Shapiro-Wilk test. The Shapiro-Wilk normality test is a test conducted to determine the distribution of random data in small sample. The Shapiro-Wilk method uses a database that has not been processed in the frequency distribution table. Data is sorted, then divided into two groups to be converted in the Shapiro-Wilk. This is the mathematical written is like this. You can see. Okay, next. Next is the linearity test. The linearity test is one of the classical assumption tests that is carried out to determine the linear nature of the data distribution between the variable X and Y. Jadi uji linearitas ini merupakan salah satu uji asumsi klasik yang dilakukan untuk mengetahui sifat linear distribusi data antara variabel X dan Y. It is necessary to know whether the linear nature of the X and Y relationship affect the level of validity of the resulting regression model. Basically, regression is formed on a linear basis. Linearity test is used to determine whether two or more variables have a significant linear relationship or not. The result of this test can then be used to help make decisions in determining of the regression model that will be used appropriately. Next. Next. Next is the test of homogeneity test. The main purpose of the homogeneity test is to ensure that the number of populations to be measured to homogeneous. In other words, not much different in diversity. Nah, maksudnya itu tuh tujuan utama dari uji homogenitas ini adalah untuk memastikan bahwa jumlah populasi yang akan diukur itu homogen atau dengan kata lain itu tidak jauh berbeda antar keragamannya. The homogeneity test or test aims to ensure that the data set to be measured does come from the homogeneous is the same populations. Homogeneity is calculated when researchers want to compare an attitude, attention, or behavior in variance to population group. The population group has its own characteristic and characteristics such as age, gender, education, and others. For example, a study aimed to measure the stress level of employers at the textile factory. After the data is collected, it turns out that we can observe any data that can be studied further by comparing two population groups. Next. Okay, the next is conclusion. So the conclusion is the descriptive statistic have three main subjects such as measure of frequency, measure of central tendency, and measure of variability. In measure of frequency, there are two options that can be used by researchers. For instance, tables and histogram. The point in measure of central tendency and variability, researchers should consider the data, whether it include in data population or data sample. In the other hand, statistical test is intended to determine the significance of the relationship between variables. Classical assumption test is a statistical test used to determine the relationship between variables, including the homogeneity test, normality test, and the linearity test. Okay, I think that's enough from our group. Maybe you can yes, please.